I got back from Kansas City on a Thursday night. The sky was bruised with gray clouds, the kind that hovered but never quite rained. My flight had been delayed twice, and my phone battery had died somewhere over Iowa. I was more than ready to be home. Ready to kick off my shoes, drop my bags in the hallway, and feel like I belonged somewhere again. The driveway was empty when I pulled in. Lauren's car wasn't there, which wasn't that unusual these days. Lately, she always seemed to have a reason to be out. Late client meetings, traffic, last-minute drinks with coworkers. I used to believe every word. Now I wasn't so sure why I still tried to. The house was quiet when I stepped inside. Too quiet. Not the kind of peaceful you get after a long day, but the kind that feels like someone hit pause on real life. The dog Murphy didn't bark like he usually did when I got home. I found him curled up on his bed in the corner of the living room, barely lifting his head to look at me. Even he seemed off. I carried my suitcase upstairs, ready to dump it in the bedroom and collapse. That's when I noticed it. The sheets. They were new. Or maybe not new, but fresh, cleaned, changed, tucked in tight like a hotel bed. Our old gray set had been replaced by the navy ones we kept for guests or laundry emergencies. Lauren and I had an unspoken system when it came to bedding. We changed them together every other Sunday morning. Coffee first, then sheets. Always. Midweek laundry just wasn't our thing. I stood there, staring at the bed like it might explain itself. But it just sat there too neat, too perfect. Then I saw it. Near the foot of the bed, half tucked under the edge of the rug, was something small and shiny. I bent down, picked it up. It was a tie clip. Silver, smooth, simple. Definitely not mine. I hadn't worn a tie in weeks. Maybe months. I turned it over in my hand, the metal cold against my fingers. There was no engraving. Just a faint scratch on the back, like it had been worn more than once. My heart started to race, not fast, but heavy like a slow drumbeat in my chest. The kind of panic that didn't hit all at once but crept in around the edges. For a minute I just stood there, staring at that tie clip like it might give me a name. It didn't. Lauren came home around 8:15. I heard the garage door groan open from the kitchen, followed by the soft chime of the back door unlocking. She didn't call out right away. Just set her bag down with a soft thud and kicked off her heels. I stayed at the counter, hands resting on the cool granite, the tie clip tucked into my pocket. When she finally walked in, her smile was automatic. Too quick, like a reflex she hadn't bothered to think about. Her hair was up, her blouse crisp, makeup still perfect, like she'd just stepped out of a meeting, not a commute. "Hey," she said, crossing the kitchen to give me a kiss on the cheek. "You're back early." I nodded. Flight changed. Weather was moving in. She opened the fridge, pulled out a bottle of sparkling water. "How was Kansas City?" I shrugged. "Same as usual. Long days, hotel eggs, no sleep." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I let a beat pass. Then another. Then I reached into my pocket and pulled out the tie clip. "Did you get me something?" She turned, her eyes landing on the object in my palm. For a second, less than a second, her expression faltered. I caught it. A flicker of surprise. Maybe panic. Then it was gone. "Oh," she said, walking over and plucking it from my hand. "That? Yeah, that was supposed to be a surprise." "A surprise?" She nodded quickly. "I was going to give it to you for your birthday. I know it's early, but I saw it and thought of you. I must have dropped it when I was trying to hide it. My birthday's in November. This was June." I looked at her. Really looked at her. The way her jaw clenched just slightly. The way she wouldn't meet my eyes for more than a second. The casual confidence she usually carried had been replaced by something else. Not guilt? Not exactly. But a rehearsed calm. Like she'd already gone over this story in her head maybe more than once. I didn't push. Not yet. I just said, "For months early?" She laughed too loud, too forced. "You know me. Impulsive shopper. I just thought I'd stash it away and forgot where I put it." She kissed me again, too fast, and walked out of the room like she had somewhere to be, even though we both knew she didn't. I heard her climbing the stairs, humming under her breath. I stayed downstairs, staring at the spot where she'd been. Something had changed. I knew it. And no matter how hard she tried to smooth the edges, it was already slipping through the cracks. Lauren had always been good at explanations. Smooth ones. The kind that made you feel stupid for even asking. But something about this one felt different. Off. Maybe it was the timing. Maybe it was how tightly she gripped the tie clip as she left the room. Like she was afraid I might take it back. I didn't sleep well that night. The bed felt unfamiliar. The sheets smelled like lavender fabric softener, not the subtle vanilla Lauren usually used. I kept rolling over, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself it was nothing. People change sheets midweek. Maybe she really had been trying to surprise me. Maybe she really did buy a gift months in advance. But I knew better. Something had shifted. Something that didn't have anything to do with laundry or birthday gifts or tired husbands returning from business trips. Something that had already started unraveling long before I noticed the first thread. And now? Now I couldn't stop pulling at it. I tried to brush it off. Tried to pretend like the tie clip was just a fluke, an early gift, a harmless mistake. But I couldn't unsee what I saw. Couldn't unfeel the shift in the air, like the temperature had dropped just enough for your skin to notice but not enough for anyone else to believe you. Over the next few weeks, everything that used to feel normal started to feel off. Lauren became quieter. Not silent, just less present. She still asked about my day, still smiled when she handed me coffee in the mornings. But her questions didn't feel curious anymore. They felt scripted, like she was playing the part of a wife without thinking about the lines. And I started paying attention. I noticed how she was always just about to leave when I walked in. How she kept her phone close, like cling to your body close. She used to leave it everywhere, bathroom counter, nightstand, even on top of the fridge once. Now it never left her side. And when she got a message, she'd glance at it and angle the screen away so subtly you'd miss it if you weren't watching for it. I was. There were other things. Little things that probably wouldn't mean anything on their own. She wore perfume to the grocery store. She put on lipstick to walk the dog. She changed her outfit 3 times before meeting a friend for lunch. The thing is, Lauren was always stylish, always well put together, but this was different. This was curated. Intentional. Like she was preparing for someone to see her in a specific light. And it didn't feel like that someone was me. One evening I asked her if she wanted to have dinner with my parents that weekend. It was my dad's birthday and they were planning a small get-together, nothing fancy, just barbecue and bad wine. The kind of thing she used to look forward to. I'd love to, she said, barely looking up from her laptop. But I've got a meeting Saturday night. Client stuff. A meeting? On a Saturday? She shrugged. It's a big deal. A new account. They're only in town for 1 day and it's the only time that worked. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But something in her voice felt rehearsed. Saturday night rolled around. She left around 6, dressed in a black dress I hadn't seen in a while, the one with the slit up the side. The one she used to save for anniversary dinners. I stayed home. Tried to focus on the game, on anything. But I couldn't shake the unease gnawing at my gut. Around 9 p.m. I checked Instagram. A reflex, really? I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. And then I saw it. It was a story, one of those short, disappearing clips. Posted by a mutual acquaintance from Lauren's work. Not someone I knew well. Her name was Danny, I think. The video was shaky, taken at some rooftop party. I almost scrolled past it until I saw the hand. A woman's hand holding a champagne glass, laughing as the camera panned briefly past her. Man's voice in the background, saying something I couldn't make out. But that hand, I knew that hand. The birthmark on the wrist. The chipped nail polish she hadn't had time to redo. That was Lauren's hand. And she wasn't in a meeting. I didn't say anything when she came home that night. She looked flushed, energized in a way I hadn't seen in months. How was the client? I asked. She blinked. Oh, fine. Talked numbers for hours. Pretty dry stuff. I nodded slowly. I'll bet. She didn't notice the tension in my voice. Or maybe she did and didn't care. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to connect the dots that had been right in front of me all along. There was the night she said she was working late but came home smelling like a bar, like gin and limes and too much cologne. She laughed it off, blamed it on a client's handshake. He was wearing half the bottle, she said, and I believed her. There was the time she missed our anniversary dinner because she forgot to block her calendar. She sent flowers and made it up to me the next night with a reservation and her favorite red dress. But her eyes never really met mine across the table. She was there, but she wasn't. And now the sheets. The tie clip. The rooftop party. The lies. They weren't loud lies. They weren't even mean. But they were constant. They trickled in like water from a leaky pipe, slowly warping the foundation until everything underneath started to rot. The worst part? She was still kind. Still kissed me goodbye in the mornings. Still brought me coffee without asking how I wanted it. Because she remembered. That's what made it so hard to accept. When someone stops loving you all at once, it's brutal but clean. You can scream. You can cry. You can mourn what's been lost. But when someone stops loving you in pieces, quietly, kindly, it's harder to spot the moment it all fell apart. And maybe that's the point. Maybe she didn't want me to notice. Maybe she was hoping I'd just keep showing up. Making coffee, mowing the lawn, being the good husband while she slipped into someone else's life in the spaces I stopped filling. I wanted to confront her, to grab her phone, pull up messages, demand the truth. But I didn't. Not yet. Because something in me said this went deeper than late-night texts or rooftop drinks. Something in me said I needed to be sure. It happened on a Wednesday. I remember because Wednesdays were usually the most predictable day of the week. Dead center, no chaos, just the slow grind toward the weekend. That morning had been ordinary enough. I had a client presentation that ran late, then grabbed takeout from the Thai place by my office. Pad Thai, extra peanuts, Lauren's favorite too, though I wasn't thinking about her when I ordered it. I wasn't supposed to be home until 9, maybe later, but the meeting ended early, and I skipped the post-meeting chatter. Something in me just wanted to be home, not because I missed her. Honestly, I didn't know what I was feeling anymore, but I was tired of second-guessing myself. I figured I'd surprise her, maybe talk, maybe just be in the same room without pretending. When I pulled into the driveway, I noticed her car was already there. That wasn't unusual, but the house was lit up, every room. That was odd. Lauren was a light switch hawk, always on me about saving electricity. I unlocked the front door quietly, more from habit than suspicion. The house smelled different. Not bad, just unfamiliar. Spicy, like incense or cologne. The kind of smell that doesn't belong to a place but to a person. There was music playing. Not loud, but just loud enough to fill the silence. Something jazzy and old. Definitely not on any of our playlists. I moved through the foyer slowly, listening. And then I heard it. Laughter. A man's laughter. I froze. Not the kind of freeze you see in movies where the character clutches their chest and gasps. This was quieter, colder. My entire body went still. My heart beat loud in my ears. My breath caught halfway up my throat. I set the food down on the entry table and followed the sound. 2 wine glasses sat on the kitchen counter. Red wine. Full-bodied from the color, expensive from the bottle. Lauren had said she quit drinking 3 months ago. Said it made her feel sluggish. Said it wasn't good for her focus. She'd even dumped the bottle of Pinot I brought back from Sonoma. Said it was wasted on her. But here she was, drinking. I kept walking, every step heavy, every breath measured. When I reached the living room, I didn't have to step inside to see them. They were right there, in plain sight. Lauren. And Grayson. Grayson, her coworker. The one she said was harmless. He's like a golden retriever, she told me once, laughing. Completely harmless. He wasn't harmless now. She was in his lap. Not beside him. Not across from him. In his lap. Her arms draped around his shoulders. His hand tracing slow circles on her back. They were whispering something. Heads close. Foreheads touching like they were in their own little world. And maybe they were. Until I saw them, it was easy to lie to myself. To believe this was emotional, not physical. That maybe she was just lost. Confused. That maybe there was still a chance to talk it through. But you don't sit in someone's lap like that by accident. You don't drink red wine with someone's hands under your shirt because of confusion. I didn't say a word. I stood there, just out of view behind the hallway wall. I watched for maybe a minute. Long enough to feel the shape of the truth settle into my chest. Long enough to memorize the scene so I'd never forget it. Then I turned around, walked back down the hallway, picked up the bag of food, and walked out the front door. Quiet. Controlled. She never saw me, and somehow that felt right. There was no dramatic confrontation. No shouting. No broken glass or slammed doors. Just silence. And in that silence, I decided something I hadn't been ready to face until that moment. This marriage wasn't salvageable. This wasn't a mistake or a miscommunication. It was betrayal. And not just once, but deliberate, sustained betrayal. I drove aimlessly for a while, the takeout growing cold in the passenger seat. Ended up in an empty parking lot near a closed hardware store. I sat there for over an hour, staring through the windshield, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. A part of me wanted to go back, to storm in and demand answers. But what would she say? It's not what it looks like? He means nothing? We were just talking? I didn't need to hear the lies. I'd seen the truth. Instead, I went home, well, not home. I went to my friend Caleb's place. Crashed on his couch without telling him anything more than I needed a place. He didn't ask questions. Just handed me a beer and turned on the game. The next morning, I called in sick. Told the office I had a migraine. It wasn't entirely untrue. My head was pounding and my thoughts wouldn't stop spiraling. How long? How many times? Did everyone know but me? I replayed every moment from the past 6 months. Every time she smiled a little too wide after reading a message. Every working late text. Every excuse, every shift in routine. The pieces fit together now. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. I was right. And the scariest part? She never once flinched. Never once gave herself away. Lauren had been cheating with a man I'd shaken hands with. A man who came to our house for a barbecue last summer and complimented my grilling. A man I once gave a ride home from the office when his car broke down. Grayson. Of all people. I didn't go back to the house that day. Or the day after. I needed space, distance, air. I needed to get out from under her scent, her lies, the echo of laughter that didn't belong to us anymore. Instead, I started making plans. Not petty plans. Not revenge. But exit plans. Clean. Precise. Quiet. She had made her move. Now it was my turn. The worst part of betrayal isn't the lie itself. It's how deep the lie cuts into the fabric of your life. How far the deception reaches into your routines, your finances, your memories. Into the future you thought you were building. After seeing Lauren and Grayson together, I stopped being a husband. I became an investigator. I didn't go back to the house for 3 days. When I did, she wasn't there. I waited until I was sure. Her car was gone, and her location, yes, I checked her location sharing, which she had no idea I still had access to, showed her across town, near Grayson's apartment. I stepped into our house like it was a crime scene. And maybe it was. I didn't touch anything at first. I just stood in the doorway taking it all in. The wine glasses had been cleaned and put away. The music was off. Everything looked normal. Pristine. But I knew what had happened here. And I knew it wasn't the first time. So I got to work. I started with her tablet. Lauren had always been careless with it. She used it for reading, for work emails, for online shopping. I knew her password. She hadn't changed it since we started dating. Inside was a treasure trove. There were email threads between her and Grayson, cleverly titled under project names. Q4 strategy review, budget forecast, investor targets. Nothing that would raise flags if I glanced over her shoulder. But inside those threads were images, itinerary *TS, booking confirmations for places I'd never been, places I'd never even heard of. There was a hotel receipt in Chicago during a weekend. She said she was at a Women in Leadership conference. 2 guests. Room service for 2. Champagne listed twice. There were shared photo albums hidden not on her main cloud but in the file-sharing app we both used once to trade renovation ideas for our kitchen. They weren't just selfies. There was a video 10 seconds long of her kissing him while riding some kind of Ferris wheel. Her head leaned on his shoulder. She looked at peace. Happy. I hadn't seen her that happy in over a year. And now I knew why. Next, I checked the financials. Lauren and I shared one main account and had separate credit cards. But I handled the books. She never liked dealing with money, always said it stressed her out. So I logged in and started comparing statements. And that's when I found it. A series of business expenses linked to a shared vendor account under my LLC. My business. Lauren didn't even work in my field, she was in PR. But somehow she was expensing travel, dinners, hotel stays, even spa visits under my company name. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Then I looked deeper. Some of the transactions had been categorized as client entertainment. But the addresses? They matched the same cities and weekends as the emails. Chicago. Seattle. Denver. Each time I traveled for work, she'd mirrored me off by a day or 2. Just enough to keep the stories straight. Just enough to keep it invisible. Until now. Then came the transfers. Over the last 7 months, she'd made several payments to a consulting account registered under the name Greystone Limited. It sounded official. It sounded real. But when I dug into it, searched business directories, ran a trace through a contact of mine in accounting, it didn't exist. It was a shell. A dummy account. And the name? Greystone. Grayson. They were funneling money out of my business account into one under his control. That was the final blow. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was strategic. Financial. Calculated. They weren't just in love. They were running a scheme. I sat there in the kitchen, staring at the numbers on the screen, and I felt the anger crystallize into something harder. Cold. Purposeful. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to break things. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of a scene. I was going to dismantle her plan with precision. I took *TS, printed reports, exported emails. I called a friend from college, he worked in digital forensics. Asked him how to make all this admissible in court. We met the next day and he walked me through it. Chain of custody. Timestamps. Authentication. He helped me set up hidden surveillance in my home office. A legal gray area, sure, but I needed confirmation. I knew she was still using the space when I wasn't home. I installed an audio trigger, synced it to my phone. 2 days later, it paid off. She brought Grayson over. Not for S**X, not this time. For planning. They sat at my desk and discussed logistics. I heard Grayson say, once it's cleared, we'll run it through the vendor shell, then move it offshore. His head's still in Kansas City. He won't notice. They laughed. She said something about me being too trusting. I listened to that recording twice. The second time, I didn't feel pain. I felt clarity. She thought I was blind. She thought I was passive. She thought I was stupid. But she was wrong. I compiled everything into a folder. Digital and print. I made backups. Stored copies in a fireproof box in the cloud and with my lawyer. Then I filed the paperwork. Not just for divorce, but for fraud. The documents went out in a thick envelope, express courier, signature required. I didn't text her. I didn't call. I let the papers speak. I wasn't ending our marriage. I was exposing a crime. When I filed the fraud case, I didn't expect it to move quickly. But it did. Maybe it was the volume of evidence. Maybe it was the sheer audacity of what Lauren and Grayson had done. Maybe it was the fact that I'd kept my trail clean, meticulously so. Whatever the reason, within weeks, a court date was set in Omaha. The day of the hearing, the courtroom was buzzing. Local businesspeople showed up, some who'd worked with me over the years, others just drawn by the drama. Lauren hadn't told many people about what was happening, of course she hadn't. But once the subpoenas went out, once depositions were scheduled, word got around. And it wasn't just about the affair anymore. It was about theft, fraud, exploitation. Lauren walked in dressed like she was attending a lunch interview. Sleek black blazer, heels too high for comfort, and her signature soft smile. I knew that smile. It was the one she used when she wanted something without asking. The smile she wore when she lied and needed you to believe it. She didn't look at me. Grayson walked in behind her, chin high, looking more uncomfortable than she did. He wore a wrinkled suit and a tie that didn't match his shirt. His confidence had taken a hit, but he was still trying to project control. Still trying to play the part of the harmless friend. The business consultant. They both looked at my attorney, Cynthia Martin, and I saw something flicker in Lauren's eyes. Recognition. Maybe even fear. Cynthia was sharp, cool, and absolutely relentless in prep. I took my seat next to her and said nothing. The judge entered. Proceedings began. Lauren's lawyer, a guy named Rafferty who had clearly watched too many legal dramas, started with charm. Tried to paint Lauren as an overworked spouse who simply got swept up in the wrong partnership. He leaned into her career pressures, her overlap with my business accounts, called it a bookkeeping misunderstanding. But when Cynthia stood up, the entire tone shifted. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't grandstand. She presented facts. Emails. Transaction records. The consulting account tied to Grayson. My surveillance audio, yes, it was entered into evidence, and no, neither of them had expected it. Then came the photos, Grayson sitting at our home office discussing fund movements. A voice recording of Lauren saying he doesn't even look at the statements. He signs off without reading. Another clip where Grayson actually joked about buying crypto with my money. Lauren's face changed as the evidence mounted. First, she went pale. Then red. Her smile slipped. Her posture tightened. She whispered frantically to Rafferty, who looked like he was already planning how to distance himself from this disaster. Grayson didn't speak. Just kept his jaw clenched and eyes forward. I sat still. The judge paused at one point and asked, Mrs. Morrison, were you aware that the account you were accessing was not under your name nor tied to any official role within the plaintiff's business? Lauren stood to respond. Her voice wavered. I was told it was a shared consulting resource. I didn't realize. Cynthia rose before she could finish. Permission was never granted, and Mrs. Morrison received income from these transfers. We have records showing withdrawals into her personal account and purchases made with those funds. She handed over the documentation. The judge took it. Silence fell. You could hear the air conditioner hum. Rafferty looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. The real unraveling came when Cynthia called a surprise witness, Jamie, the finance manager from my company. Lauren hadn't expected that. Jamie testified under oath that she had flagged 2 odd transactions Lauren had initiated 6 months earlier but was told by Grayson to let it go. When Jamie pushed back, he told her it was above her pay grade. Jamie reported the incident to me, something I had forgotten until Cynthia connected the dots again. I thought Tyler had handled it, Jamie said. But then I realized he didn't know. Lauren looked like she might cry. And still, I said nothing. I just watched the woman I'd built a life with try to keep her lies standing. Watched her grip the table as her story crumbled brick by brick. I don't know what broke her more, the evidence, the witnesses, or the fact that no one in the room was buying her innocence anymore. Even the gallery was shifting. Whispers. Side eyes. People who used to call her a powerhouse of charm now watched her squirm under cross-examination like they were seeing her for the first time. By the time the court adjourned for the day, Lauren looked shell-shocked. Outside the courtroom, I saw her talking to Rafferty, her voice sharp, brittle. I didn't stop. I walked past them without a word. And still, she didn't meet my eyes. She never did. That night, my phone blew up. Text after text. Friends. Colleagues. Even Lauren's old assistant who thanked me for finally revealing what most of us suspected. I ignored them all. I wasn't interested in revenge or reputation. This wasn't about the crowd. It was about closure. The next day, court resumed. The judge didn't mince words. He ruled in my favor on all counts. Misappropriation of business funds. Breach of trust. Fraudulent use of company accounts. He ordered an immediate asset freeze for both Lauren and Grayson pending restitution calculations. Their accounts were flagged. Business ties were subpoenaed. And the divorce? Finalized with prejudice. No alimony. No division of my company's assets. She walked in with Rafferty and walked out alone. When I left the courthouse, the sun was out. People were gathered on the steps murmuring. I kept my head down. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. But I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not the soft kind that comes from healing. The hard kind. The kind you earn after fighting for it. In the weeks following the court ruling, everything unraveled for Lauren. The asset freeze hit hard. Her personal accounts were locked. Her company, well, what was left of it, began a rapid downward spiral. Investors pulled out. Her board called for an emergency audit. What they found matched what the judge had seen: inconsistencies, backdoor transfers, and an obvious trail leading back to her and Grayson. Grayson, it turned out, wasn't new to this kind of thing. A prior fraud investigation had followed him during a job in Denver years ago, but it had never stuck. Now, with hard evidence and witness testimony, it was different. His assets were seized. His passport flagged. Lauren tried to spin the story, claimed she was manipulated, tricked, emotionally coerced. But the digital trail told a different story. Her words, her voice, her signatures, they all painted her as an active participant. Her name was on the wire instructions. Her laughter was in the audio recordings. Her intent was unmistakable. Her reputation, which once seemed bulletproof, collapsed almost overnight. She lost her seat on 2 boards. Her firm issued a public statement of separation. The apartment she had moved into after the divorce, the one with the skyline view, was repossessed under asset forfeiture. Even the designer clothes, the leased car, the brand she had curated online, gone. And Grayson? Vanished. Word was he'd slipped out of the country before federal charges could be filed. I wasn't surprised. Cowards always run. I didn't celebrate. I watched. From a distance. I'd already said everything I needed to say. The court had spoken. Now the consequences were speaking louder. It was a Thursday evening when Lauren showed up at my door. I hadn't heard from her in weeks, not since the final court hearing. She stood there on the porch, makeup smudged, hair windblown, her expression stripped of its usual polish. "Tyler," she said softly. "Can we talk?" I didn't open the door. Instead, I handed her a sealed envelope through the small crack. Inside was a short, formal note. "Please direct all future communication through legal counsel. There is nothing left to discuss." She didn't cry. She just nodded and walked away. I watched her go. It didn't feel triumphant. It felt final. A few months later, I heard she'd moved to Chicago. New name, new job, small-time PR firm that hadn't done its homework. Grayson's trail ran cold in Spain. Maybe Thailand. No one knew for sure. As for me, I poured myself into rebuilding. Not just my business, my life. I opened a new workshop. Sponsored a local school's robotics team. Went back to the basics: wood, metal, purpose. Honest work. There was a woman I met, Elena. She wasn't flashy. She wasn't loud. She didn't try to fix me or ask me to forget. She just listened. She'd once handed me a bottle of water in court during a break when I looked like I might fall over. I didn't even notice her then. But over time, she became the one person I trusted again. It wasn't fireworks. It was peace. And peace was enough. Lauren had made her choice. So had I. And while she faded into a city skyline far from mine, I stayed behind, quiet, steady, rebuilding. Not for her. For me.